Good afternoon, gentlemen. Is my microphone working? I think it is. Uh, Anybody watch the election results last night?
Yes, sir. We was watching.
Oh, uh, hold on for a second. All right, I'm back.
All right.
So, what's going on with your documentaries this week? I'm still going through everybody's pitches.
Okay. Yeah, so I was able to submit my assignment. Now what I'm planning on doing is get ready to start shooting some interviews this week.
Um, did we go over any of your questions last week? Your interview questions? Had you started to think about them, or
Oh no, so I have not started my interview questions just yet. Is that
have you looked at the worksheet yet for your interview questions?
yes, sir, I glimpsed over them.
Okay. And so the most important questions are the four questions that are highlighted.
Hmm.
Um, that'll help you create the structure, the narrative guts for your
Okay.
documentary. It's really, really important that you ask your interviewees to incorporate the essence of the question as a statement. That so you don't have to use title cards when you're actually editing the interview. And so, for example, if the question was, why did you attack the bear? The person would answer, I attacked the bear because we were afraid. And so, and then you don't need title cards, and then the interview makes it very sense. But the four questions that, oh, good God, my family is just, I gotta pause this. Like, they're killing me every day. um, if you answer those four questions, even if you didn't have any more questions, you could structure your documentary. Um, I like to give the interviewees the questions in advance so they can think about it. They have some robust answers. Usually, when you give the person the questions in advance, they will answer kind of several of the questions in one question. Make sure you're asking the questions in what I call essay answer form, where it's a really robust, rich question that can't be answered with yes or no, and it can't be answered with one or two sentences. They're going to have to talk for at least, 1, 2, or 3 minutes to give you a rich, in-depth answer. Um, Almost everything in life is really predetermined by your planning. Instead of just burning through the questions and just throwing stuff at random, if you really think about the questions and answer and create rich, in-depth questions, it's like the documentary edits itself. It's going to make it so much easier when you edit the documentary if you put the time in the pre-planning, so you get the richness coming out. Um, Ryan, were you here last week, Ryan? Oh, actually, I see Ryan's microphone is not active. But James, you were here last week, right?
Yeah, I was here with you.
Mhm. What's going on with your documentary this week? Have you started on your questions?
I did. I started in like the early stages. I think I'm at the part now where I'm like trying to transition out of the um I don't want to call it the problem, but what he's overcoming and how to transition him into telling like what he's into and how he's problem solved his grief issues and how he can share this and help others in the future. So I'm like at that part right now.
So for this class, I realize most people probably already know their interview subjects, but you still want to do some research, whatever websites, articles, pre-discussions you have a rich understanding of their background so you know what questions to ask, and that'll really help improve the overall interview if you're very, very prepared. Um, really know your questions, almost have them memorized so that when you're asking the questions, that you can listen to their answers. When they give you their answers, that they might give you something you didn't know they were going to say, and then you're going to have to do a follow-up question. So you got to keep track of where you're going. I usually have my questions on an iPad, try to look at it as little as possible, and also try to really listen to ask those great follow-up questions. My George Floyd documentary, I was interviewing somebody and I was just asking nothing burger questions that I ask everybody, which was, have you ever considered running for office? And this lady was like, nah, felons can't run for elected office. And threw me off. I didn't see that in her background. I had to pause for a moment and decide if I was going to follow up on that. And so, yeah, you got to listen because even though you think you know who you're talking to, they may surprise you with some of their answers. Being interviewed is also just sort of intoxicating, especially if you're not used to being interviewed. It's like, wow, his favorite subject is my favorite subject, me. And that intoxication will loosen people up a bit and get them to say things that they might not normally say that might be worth exploring on camera. Ryan, looks like you have a mic working now. Do you want to tell me where you are right now with your documentary? Have you started working on the questions?
I have not because my talent has been working nonstop, but I've been thinking about some questions for him.
Have you looked at the interview worksheet yet with the four required questions on it?
Let me check. I don't think so. I was recently I've been I was watching your videos.
Oh,
And
okay.
that's where I'm at. I'm watching your YouTube videos. They're like an hour long.
Um, yeah, speaking of videos, I don't think I've ever done a video where I go through the contracts. These are not supposed to be the first time you've seen these contracts. Actually, I think I'm gonna open up this contract for a second. I caught something that's kind of like missing in our the contracts explanation in my class. So let me jump in. See, how do I want to open this up? Uh, let me first. I'm gonna share my screen. Do I want to share my desktop? Not really. Hold on. Let me close a bunch of this stuff on my desktop. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Yes, I can see it.
Oh. So the thing that I should have changed is for your general release and hold harmless and your student production waiver release and hold harmless, your technically also supposed to have those signed for your location. Right now, I just have the location agreement and location release, but whoever the owner is of your location of locate or locations also needs to sign the general release and hold harmless and the student production waiver release and hold harmless. I don't know. That's just something I forgot to put in there, and I'm going to change that later today. Just wanted to make sure I said that on camera. And let me run through. There's really only one contract. These, we're always working on the contracts, and some of the contract names are worded oddly, which mislead the students unintentionally. So if you don't use the zip file in this class, you might have an issue combining all of your paperwork into a singular PDF. It's the way they named the fields on the back end. I've modified these contracts so they have form fields, and when I modified them on the back end, I made sure each field had a different name so it doesn't create confusion. So if you don't use the zip file for this class for your contracts, you're going to have to throw everything into one giant zip folder or like into an Adobe binder. Um, General release and hold harmless. This one is fine. This is the one that always trips people up, where it says student production waiver release and hold harmless. When people see student, they just think it means them. I've tweaked the language a little bit on mine. The participant signature, and unless you're doing your crew hold harmless, which I don't really make you guys do, but you're supposed to do too. So this is good. The participant signature is going to be the talent, the crew member, or the location owner. Production company representative is just you, and so this form again is for talent, crew member, or the location owner. Talent release, that's just straightforward. To have the talent sign, you know who the talent is. One of these throws people off. So if you're using a packet that wasn't from this course, sometimes some of the talent forms are in a singular PDF, and people think that it's like one form, but it's two or three forms. You have to have the person sign each form, not just once on the PDF. It's like two or three forms in a PDF, and they need to sign each form. People should be, you need to print their full name and have them sign their full name, and the signature needs to be in the signature box. Why? Normally I have these set up so you can sign. I'm gonna have to tweak these again. So in the actual course, if you go to instructions, there's a video here on how to sign forms digitally with Adobe Acrobat. There's a feature in Adobe Acrobat that's called like Adobe Digital Signature. And Adobe Digital Signature is like using DocuSign. It's like an official way to sign that creates like encryption and a code. It just doesn't mean that you can just put a PDF in Adobe in any way you want, and that counts as a signature. It's an actual thing that you click on Adobe Document Sign in Adobe. And so if you are going to do a true Adobe e-signature, make sure you're using the true Adobe method. And just watch this video. This video will help you sign forms correctly. Also, for the entire program, you may not type a signature using a script or cursive font. Signatures must be signed by hand. Um, if I get stuff that looks like it was a font, I'm going to send it back and say, hey, I need these people to sign by hand. You may not use typed signatures. They aren't legally binding. I know now when you go online, sometimes it says type your name. That's different. But for our purposes, we need everyone to sign by hand unless you're using Adobe Digital Signature or DocuSign, where there is a way not necessarily to sign with your finger, but it's is a true legal uh, stamp with a unique code in it. Um, I think that's all I wanted to go over with contracts because I never go over them in these videos. These are the 4 questions I was talking about that you have to ask. Create a question about the goal of your protagonist. Um, be a writer, use some creativity, going back to your 3-act development worksheet, ask a question about their goal. What were you trying to accomplish? Why were you trying to create this organization? Use your own words and make that robust. Create questions about the obstacles they had to overcome. That's basically your first half of Act Two. Um, how and why did the protagonist succeed or fail at trying to accomplish that goal? That's your second half of Act Two. And create a question about what advice your protagonist would offer to someone else in a similar goal. That's basically the climax, last 45 seconds of your documentary. Please do 20 questions. You can do more, that's fine. If your questions are not robust, you may only get a 30-second answer, and then you're not going to have as much interview footage. So if you do more than 20 questions as a backup, that's not going to hurt. That'll make sure that you have a lot of information. When you edit everything together, I'm asking for 20 minutes. Just give me 20 minutes of your best footage. If you didn't have 20 minutes, you're going to need to submit all of your footage. But if, let's say, you had 60 minutes of footage, don't submit all 60. Part of this assignment is what we would call pre-editing, where you're beginning to think about, which footage sounds like it has a better chance of ending up in the rough cut, and I want you to edit it down. If you have more than one camera, I only want the main camera, which is your FX6. I don't need your B cam or your C cam footage. All I need is your FX6 footage. If you're planning to use an additional camera that is not an FX6, you must run it by me first for me to approve whether or not we will allow that camera. If you run it by me and I approve the camera, you can use up to 20% footage that is not from your FX6 if it is a pre-approved camera. Have you guys yet in the program been taught how to do DaVinci Dissolve, or what level of color grading have you been taught with Adobe Premiere? Anyone?
I'll jump in and just say, in previous courses, it has been things that came about where we were able to play around with some things, but it's nothing that had us dive directly into Adobe color grading. And when it comes to DaVinci Resolve, it was always and for extra learning, you can click on this and listen. So I don't know if it was since it wasn't like an assignment, did a lot, but I have some experience in it personally, just personally. playing around with it years ago and up to this point. So that's all. I mean, that's like the closest I can,
Well, one, if you know how to do DaVinci and you're good at it, yeah, go ahead and shoot an S log. You're going to have more dynamic curve. If you know how to do DaVinci, S log is going to be great. It's going to give you the most control over the image. If you do not know how to do DaVinci, it might not be a good idea to shoot an S log. It can be a hot mess. You got to understand the right and wrong way to shoot with LUTs. You really need to know how to read a vector scope if you really want to be good at shooting in RAW. It's going to look better if you don't shoot in S log if you're not an expert in color grading. If you know how to color grade, but you don't know how to color grade in Adobe, I mean, you don't know how to color grade in DaVinci, but you can color grade in Adobe. Eh, I mean, you can get it, okay-ish color grading in Adobe. It's not going to necessarily be like, wow, but you're going to be able to play around with it a little bit. I would say you could maybe shoot an S log if you're good at color grading in Adobe. But again, Adobe can't really do what DaVinci does, and it'll
I
kind
do
of
have a question about
go ahead.
so um I don't know when you guys started, but I have the MacBook Air. For me, that also kind of affects if I want to do some color grading. I have played around with the FX6 and I did some personal projects on my own and doing sports, but when it comes to color grade, I feel like the laptop for me that they gave us, it kind of takes a long time for it to
They
render.
gave you an error?
Yeah,
That must be new.
yeah, and I don't like it because it takes so long to process, and I'm not even doing like heavy color grading at all. It's
One, do you have a bunch of files on your desktop?
no, so I edit off of the Samsung SSD drive.
Okay.
Yeah.
Next question. So that's good. How much space is free in your internal hard drive in your MacBook Air?
So I haven't downloaded anything outside of the Adobe Cloud that they gave us. So
For your MacBook Air to function properly, one, there can be nothing on the desktop, and
okay,
two, a minimum of your hard drive must be 25% free.
gotcha.
Also, every week you need to run disk utility, better first aid, which is built into your computer. But better than that is to pay like $40 a year for Clean My Mac. And you need to run that at least every week, a smart scan and then some maintenance. And
Okay,
if you're editing every day, you need to run Clean My Mac every day if you're
gotcha.
editing, because editing does a lot more computations in the background. So
Mm-hmm.
if I'm editing a project, God forbid it's a feature, I run that every day at the end of the night, and that really sweetens up and sharpens up my computer a lot. Um, with Adobe, you know how Adobe is always shooting out a new update?
Yeah,
All of the old programs, the versions of the application are still hidden inside your folder for each application. You got to Google that, and you got to dump all the old versions of each application. That'll speed it up. Also, Adobe doesn't automatically dump the scratch disk from every time you were editing on a project. You need to go in to, if you've been using Media Encoder, if you've been using After Effects, if you're using Premiere, you got to go in there and dump the old scratch disk, and that's going to speed up Adobe a
okay.
lot. Um, have you ever gone into Adobe and manually picked how much RAM you would like to assign to Adobe while you're editing?
Oh no, sir, I didn't even know that was a thing. So you,
Yeah, man, I'm gonna have to do like a monster list.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, you can don't let Adobe pick. You can say, you can be smart enough to close everything else that you don't need open and put most of the RAM when your computer's on to work inside of Premiere, and that's really going to speed up your computer. Um, when you finish and when you're rendering, you can set it to use graphics acceleration. That's going to speed up how fast you render. And then
Okay.
when you're exporting, don't use media encoder unless you're trying to like export 20 files at a time. Media encoder can get buggy. Sometimes you got to pull out all the markers.
Okay.
Just never export through media encoder if you're not doing a giant batch.
Okay. See, that's a lot of information. I'm gonna have to go back and watch this video. So
Yeah. I'm gonna have to make a list. Yeah, you just figure stuff out.
yeah.
Um, So my programs are going to get mad at me. And so if you're not an expert in color grading, just shoot Cinetone.
Okay.
Stay away from S-Log. I mean, if you really know what you're doing with color grading,
Yeah.
definitely shoot S-Log because you need to learn how to work with S-Log. I would recommend when you're doing B-roll to shoot a shot and S-Log. Just shoot one so you
Hmm.
can practice with it, but don't shoot the whole thing because
Yeah.
it'll be a mess until you
Right.
guys are really ready. You really, really, really need to know DaVinci if you're going to shoot in the S-Log.
So I had the Sony FX30 and I shot on the FX 3. So I had a lot of experience working with a lot of different cameras because I used to work for a precision camera down in Austin, Texas. It's the largest
Okay.
camera in Texas. And so I've had the opportunity to play around with a lot of different camera brands, and I'm a Sony guy. So I know how to shoot an S-Log 3 when I have to, and it's pretty easy. But on the FX6, it's a different system setup. So
Yeah.
really learning to read the vector scopes. So that's something I'm kind of like trying to learn and figure out. I know I can expose correctly on the FX3 or the FX30. That's not a problem, but the FX6 is kind of different for me.
Yeah, so I mean, some people are just like, yeah, you just do LUT and make sure you set it for the LUT. Some people will say just forget about the LUT, turn on your vector scope and make everything neutral, and then you can do your LUTs and stuff later and make it look however you want to look. You just put everything neutral in the middle so you can raise it and lower it as much as you want. But to get everything neutral, you have to know how to read the
Hmm.
vector scopes.
Yeah.
I am not an expert in shooting raw, so that's like a new skill. Everybody wants to shoot raw now. It's
Yeah.
something you need to know, but it is a different
Mhm.
skill set.
Now I have played around with the S-Cinetone, and I have did some minor tweaks to it to kind of maybe add a little contrast to it or sharpness, and the image quality out of that is still pretty nice.
Yeah. So we can tell like who shot in Cinetone, who shot in S-Log, and who's not actually on an FX6. We know. It's obvious, and we just pretend we don't know. You just get a 60, but we do know.
Hmm.
When I first started teaching, I was like, I don't know about this FX6. I mean, this footage looks whack. And then somebody explained to me, oh, no, man, they sold that. That's not FX6 footage. And I was like, oh. Then when I saw FX6 footage and somebody knew what they were doing, I was like, I need to get one of these. This is amazing. So, oh, I should get rid of this. If you have an older, that was a long time ago. The FS5. I don't think there's anybody still out there with the SF5. I should probably get rid of that. That's what the cameras always change. That's what they used to have in this program before the FX6 came out. FX6 is on the Netflix approved camera lists for shows that they produce, inside. You've got a movie studio with an FX6. I mean, don't sell it, don't break it, don't let anybody borrow it. If you let somebody borrow it, they're never ever going to give it back to you. Never, because that's a studio.
Mhm.
So any questions?
So we are able to shoot an S-Log 3 if we want to.
Yeah,
And
I mean, if you know what you're doing, definitely shoot an S-Log. I mean, if you know how to color grade it, it's going to look better, and you make it look like Batman. If you don't, it's going to be a mess. You
gotcha.
got to know what you're doing.
And then the questions, we can pretty much come up with our own questions. But they
Yeah,
have to
and
be at least 20 questions.
really put some thought in the questions. You're going to make your life so much easier by coming up with thoughtful, in-depth questions.
Okay, gotcha.
And I do have a question as well. Um, I know last week when we spoke and we was breaking down the interviews and how many subjects and talent we had. So I was telling you about mine where it was the husband and his wife. Um, what like, and I know you said the main reason for having multiple subjects was because one always normally falls off the back of the bus. But
Yeah.
I actually have a strong source. Like we're all set to go. So like, and he's the main thing. I'm not breaking basically the project for class if I'm just have him, right?
No,
Am I
no, no.
thinking
Yeah,
right?
that's
Okay,
fine. Yeah,
okay,
you can just
okay.
have them. It's just
No, I
um
got you. I got you.
you
I
know, when
got
you
you. I
have
got you.
more people, it's also visual variety, different
Yeah,
takes, different opinions, but I mean, it's only
absolutely.
a 4-minute documentary. I mean, you can
Absolutely.
only get but so
Absolutely.
bored with one person in 4 minutes.
And my idea, and I wanted to ask you this right here, so I could just know, either go forward with it or shoot it down. I wanted to know, like, so for each act, in my mind, because it was going to be one location film with him, I was going to switch the shot for each act, in different places of the location. Um, is that okay?
Yeah, yeah, that's in the instructions. So if you
Yep,
only have
gotcha.
one person, still do 2 or 3 camera
Absolutely.
setups.
Gotcha.
If you can't get to more rooms and more locations, you can just go off of a different wall, or technically,
Yep.
I would say corners. Don't shoot flat on a wall. Always go on an angle. Having angles, triangles, diagonals is higher cinematic composition than just straight flat lines.
Absolutely. Thank you. That's what my question.
Um, does anybody have labs, or y'all just using shotguns?
Right now, I just
I
have
have
a
laugh.
but I do think
Um,
I have myself.
so your sound is going to sound much, 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 much better in an interview on a lav. Even if it's a $20 wired lavalier, it's still going to sound better because it's just close. It's aural, AURAL physics. Um, if you're on a lapel mic, a lavalier microphone, it's okay that it's in shot. You don't have to hide it underneath their clothes. If it's wired, you run the wire up their shirt and then just clip it on the you have them run it up their shirt and you just clip it on their collar. Um, Never ever use one microphone. I mentioned that last week. Something goes wrong. Never, no such thing as a one microphone shoot. So if you do have lavs, you still need to run your shotgun in the second channel. Go back to CVD and learn how to run audio in all 4 channels. And what Randy taught you in CVD was to set channels 3 and 4 to auto level in case you have your knob set too high or too low. Channels 3 and 4 will be set to auto and will have automatically adjust the sound if it's not loud enough or if it's too loud. And that'll be a backup in case you got it wrong. I have a 32-bit floating processor field mixer, which records at 4 levels at the same time and then digitally mixes them. So when you're editing, I can turn it way up or way down, and it never breaks up and it's never too low. But definitely put your 2 mics, and definitely put your audio in all 4 channels, with channels 3 and 4 set to auto level. Um,
I have
does that go ahead?
going back to the interview questions. So we need 20 questions. And I know for me, I have 3 talents that I will be interviewing. The main one, of course, I want to save the good questions for him. But I can use part of those 20 questions for the other talent as well.
It could be the same 20 questions if you want. It doesn't have to be, it just depends on your situation, whether or not it needs to be the same or different questions. My questions, like if I had 20 questions for 10 interviewees, probably 12 or 15 might be the same exact question. And then there'll be like another 7 or 5 that are slightly different for each person's situation based on how much research I was able to do about that person. But it's totally fine to have the same 20 questions.
Okay.
Does everybody remember from CVD how to use Focus Assist?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
So,
I do. Yep.
a lot of times, students hand in work with soft focus. I'm not going to say they're not trying. Like these glasses are cosmetic because I can't see a thing. These are progressive lenses, meaning bifocals that you can't cosmetically see. In addition to focusing it, focus Assist. I'm old school. I get out my tape measure and I measure the distance from that person's eyeball to the lens before I start tweaking anything. And I mentioned this last week. And then I take a little piece of paper and I put it on their eyes with like 6-point text. And then I go into focus magnification and I make sure I can read the tiny text on that sheet of paper. Even though a person's doing an interview and they're supposed to be still, some people like to move around. And if you're like got a prime lens and you're on like a T1.2 or T1.4, they're gonna go out of focus. I mean, for the most part, you're fine at like a 5.2 or 5.4 for your f-stop. If you know what you're doing, you can go lower than that, but be careful. Um, if you've done the tape measure, you've used focus assist, you've got the lines, and you should still download a test shot, put it on your laptop, and just make sure that it's in focus. Sometimes when you think you've done everything correctly and you download that shot to your laptop and you put it on a bigger screen, you find out that instead of having the focus on the eye, it was really on the ear. Maybe it was on the chin. And sometimes you find out like the mic was in the shot or the light was in the shot. It's a lot different when you blow up a shot on a bigger screen, and unless you're using a giant iPad or something as your external monitor. Um, Try to get the shotgun as close as possible. Um, Having the people hold the shotgun, it's not a great look. If you have handheld mics, yeah, you can hold a handheld mic, but it's not a great look. Really avoid having the person hold the shotgun. It's just not a good look. Doesn't look professional. If it's like the news or an interview, that's a little bit. When I say an interview, I meant like out on the field, somebody on the curbside. Um, but for the most part, it's just not a good look for a documentary. Any other questions?
So what's the shotgun is like another mic or something, or Because
The shotgun is the microphone they gave you in your production
I was like, I
package.
have a microphone. It's just I don't have the Vax thing I was talking about, the clip-ons.
Oh yeah, they didn't give you lavs. I mean, you don't. Well, I would say you don't have to have a lav. Yes, you do. It just sounds better. So when you're watching the movie, they actually do have wireless lavs under their clothes and a really, 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 really expensive shotgun. And sometimes there's more than one in the scene. Your dialogue is always going to sound better on a lav.
Mm.
It's just physics. Shotgun gives you more of a natural sound. It can kind of pick up production sound, but that they're always using both. You never want to use one. If you're like a really sophisticated post production audio engineer, you're gonna mix a little bit of the shotgun in the lab. If you're not a post production audio engineer, you're going to just dump the shotgun track, use the lav. But then if it's wireless, sometimes something goes wrong. There's a pop, there's a hiss, the battery went dead, and you got to use a little bit of the shotgun track. Go ahead. You had a question?
Oh, I said it wasn't going to connect. I was adding on to your you said it
You said
wasn't going
you,
to work. You said it wasn't going to work. I was adding on to what you were saying. I said it wasn't going to connect either because it's wireless.
yeah, yeah, just sometimes it will. Not sometimes, something always goes wrong. If you're a production professional, you know that something always goes wrong. You don't know what it is. And so when people work crew a lot, they're MacGyver and they have their bag of the tricks, they got their gaffers tape, they got their tools, they got their adapters. You don't know what's going to go wrong, but you do know what solutions that you have brought with you into the future to solve the problems that you don't know are going to go wrong. And then when you have that bag of tricks that you bring with you in the future, you get really, really good at solving the surprise things that go wrong, which sometimes are the person cancels. The last documentary I shot, people canceling every day, every minute, rescheduling, all throughout the day, different days, different times. I'm running around like Bowfinger. Well, I don't even have time to put my Bluetooth in. It's crazy. But if you're prepared, you can solve those problems. Um, as you get higher up the ladder and you work on bigger productions, the problems don't go away. You just have more resources at your disposal to solve the same problems. And then with the resources and the options and the backups, you're able to get past the problems. When you're dealing with celebrities, it's just worse. I mean, they might not show up. They'll say, "Oh, my astrologer said this wasn't a good day for me." I'm not making this up. And you got to deal with that. A lot of stuff just never gets finished because just the nonsense you got to deal with.
Now I have another question. With my interview, I was supposed to be doing one of the interviews at the high school, but it's not looking as promising as I would like because having access to the gym, to the locker room, or even a baseball field. So I was looking at just maybe doing all 3 interviews at the house, but changing different backgrounds.
Yeah, I mean that's fine. Still try, and get your dream location. But sometimes you can't. And you just say, "Okay, I'm shooting my house, your house, outside, in the park." If you were gonna shoot, what you said, locker room.
Yeah, I was gonna
If you were
do it.
gonna,
One of the interviews was going to be in the locker room, then the other interview was going to be on the baseball field.
so in most cities, you don't need a permit to just go in a public park. You don't even need to be at the
Oh
baseball
yeah,
field for the school. You can go to a baseball field. Use your head. Use your head.
yeah, that's true.
The audience doesn't know the difference.
Gotcha. Okay.
Locker room, but I'd switch that to dugout.
That would be perfect, honestly. I like to get the
And it's in the
oh,
shade.
yeah. I honestly would like to get the home base in the background, kind of with the bleachers in the back as well. I
Yeah,
think
you can just wander out there if nobody's playing a game. Yeah.
yeah, that'd be a pretty nice shot.
Um, when you don't have the extra resources and your only possibility is to use your head, you'll find out that using your head and your creativity comes up with something better than what you were trying to do in the first place. Because you're like, oh, I have all these resources and all these options. We're just going to go here in the locker room. Then when you start having to use your head, you'll come up with something that was better. Like, oh man, now that I had to think about it,
That's true.
this
Yeah.
actually looks better in the locker room.
Yeah. So that's what I enjoy about filmmaking because it's always constantly changing. It's never the same. Even when you do the pre-production part of it, that's why we do the pre-production. Just for times where things doesn't go as planned, but you still have a plan, a script that you kind of want to stick to. So just being creative, using those different ideas and stuff like that, I think is good for filmmakers.
So, for those of you shooting outside, the most important thing to understand is if the sky is in the background, you need to use the built in neutral density filters. It's like a 0.369, except on your FX6, it can do micro gradations in between 3, 6, and 9. That's what it's sunglasses for your camera, and that's what brings out the sky before you start playing around with the shutter speed and the f-stop. You want to throw on those neutral density filters first, and get the exposure kind of right with that before you start tweaking anything else. And then we'll be able to see that blue sky, and it's going to look a lot much better. Also, if you're shooting outside, the sun moves, the color temperature changes. Be aware about every 15 minutes, the color temperature is going to shift a little bit and it could get brighter or darker. If you're aware of it, you can kind of tweak so there's less work you have to do in post. And never, ever, ever, ever shoot in auto anything. Auto is like if you're driving in a desert and a spaceship lands and only have 19 seconds to get the shot of the spaceship before it takes off again. That's when you put the camera in auto. But if it's not that, you're never going to use autofocus. You're just never going to use auto exposure. Never going to use auto white balance.
Now, shooting outside with that, from your experience, has audio been a problem, or have you ever had any issues with audio with shooting outside?
Uh, it depends if it's like really windy, that can be a problem, or if it's just loud and there's cars and ambulances and people screaming. Um, Kind of like use your head. How does it sound? Is it too windy? Is there too much going on? Use your headphones. Never ever record audio if you don't have any headphones at on. I mean, I've gotten burned like that. In a movie I did, we had a little girl who was just killing it. And then when we did the interviews, she was just amazing. She made up these imaginary characters to get in a character, but the young guy that was shooting the behind the scenes interview was texting the whole time and forgot to turn on the wireless mic.
Oh,
And
wow.
and then 10 years later, she's one of the stars of Outer Banks.
Oh
Wow.
man.
And footage
Oh
is
man.
lost. And we were already 1 day behind schedule. And I'm like, no, we do not have time to do this again. It's just gone. And so is your associate producer credit. Um,
Oh
yeah,
man.
sometimes you just don't have time.
Whew.
I I did a spec commercial, a sports spec commercial, and I was shooting video outside in the bleachers, and the audio was so bad that I ended up having to do a voiceover, and the voiceover kind of made the video just kind of bad. It didn't do any justice. So I learned my
Did you
lesson.
have headphones on when you were doing the audio?
Yeah, I was, but the thing was, I had a boom pole. I had high schools kind of helping me out because I was like a one-man band, so trying to do audio and do the interview and things like that was just too much. So I had some people help out. And the boom pole, they didn't know to place the boom pole. I kept telling them to keep it down low, and
Yeah.
the wind was blowing. So
If you're not on a $4,000 shotgun microphone, and you're not inside over carpet, it's not gonna sound good.
yeah,
That's a $4,000 shotgun on the movie set, and they still have Electrosonics wireless mic hidden under the clothes. Shotgun is a
Mm.
backup, but
yeah,
you know, I'm in a room right now with carpet, but even with this carpet, I still got a wooden platform under me. You know, I've got walls, I've got the ceiling. I'm still getting some room reflection. Um, yeah, that shotgun's just going to get a lot of echo. You need a really expensive shotgun to get a really sweet sound.
okay,
You've got to put your dialogue on a lav.
gotcha.
Any other questions? All right. And then I'll leave you with this. No matter what happens in the world or with the country, I know people have different worldviews, but the most important aspect of YOU is you. You are going to have the greatest impact in your life, and you will have the greatest impact in your community. As long as you understand that there's a you in YOU, you're going to be all right.
Thanks, Professor.
All right.
Yes,
See
sir.
you
Hey,
guys next
appreciate
week.
that.
All
Yep.
right.
Have a good one.
All right. See you guys next week.
Yes, sir. Have a good one.